Hello, welcome back to Retirement Clarity Radio. I am your host, Scott Newhouse. I am so excited that you are with me as we continue our conversation about retirement expenses. A really, really important conversation that we've been having. The first episode, we went through something called the retirement smile, where some researchers found out that retirees adjusted for inflation spend about 1% less per year every year in retirement. In the last episode, we went through 5 expenses in retirement that might actually go up. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about 5 expenses that could go down in your retirement, just so we can get a handle on what we're going to spend in retirement. This is really one of the most important things that you can do as you plan for your retirement, is just have a good idea, not a 100% accurate prediction, but an idea of what you plan to spend in retirement. And then from there, then we can make projections on whether your retirement goals and your retirement assets are going to have the longevity that you need to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life. Obviously, if you're just spending too much, then some things just aren't going to make sense. But if you can keep those expenses at a realistic number in proportion with your assets, then hey, you could have a great, comfortable retirement, which is obviously what we all want. So let's get into today's episode. Top 5 expenses that I think might go down in your retirement. Obviously, it's going to depend on your personal situation with yourself and your family, but these are just some statistics that I found for most retirees overall. Now, when your retirement starts, yes, you're likely to have a lower income than when you're working, but there's going to be a lot of costs that are going to be gone. And so I kind of just want us to prepare for some of these costs that we can say goodbye to once you enter your retirement. So the first expense that I have here, not a big surprise, transportation. The irony of working is that we spend so many hours, so much time, so much money just getting to work back and forth each day in terms of the wear and tear on a car, maintenance, gas, etc. As I was researching this episode, I found that a person who commutes 20 miles each way every day can expect to spend around $50,000 on gas every 10 years. Isn't that just a wild statistic? We spend that much money on gas, not to mention those other costs that I mentioned on transportation, especially with the car. So if you can end your commute in retirement, it's going to be a positive benefit, not just for your lifestyle, but for your pocketbook, of course. The average working household spends around $9,761 each year on transportation. That number drops to around $6,814 for the average retired household. So around a 30% decrease in transportation. So after you get done with that first year of retirement, you can expect to have a couple thousand more bucks in your pocket just because you're not traveling as much, you're not commuting as much. So that's one big expense that I would be surprised if it actually goes up. So yeah, we can look to transportation costs to go down in retirement. The second one is clothing costs. Good news, in retirement, there's not a dress code. Great news for all of us employees who have had to go into the office wearing certain attire, looking a certain way, trying to refresh their outfit every so often. You're going to save a lot of money on that, as well as dry cleaning as well. So that's great news, and you can kind of just wear what you want and spend a lot less doing so. The average retired household, for my research, spends around $1,070 a year on clothing, and the average working household spends around $1,866. So again, that's a big percentage decrease on clothing as well. And then also you got to factor in what you might save on dry cleaning and cleaners, etc. So that's our second big way that we can save money, just spending less on clothing and dry cleaning. Now, the third expense that might go down, and I got to emphasize might here on this one, is life insurance premiums. For many retirees, life insurance is not an essential expense. Obviously, we want life insurance to replace someone's income, especially someone's earned income, in case of an untimely death. So, if you're younger, if you have kids, if someone depends on your earned income, that's when we really see the need for life insurance. I'm personally a big fan of term life insurance, just an FYI out there. Now, when you get into retirement, there are some instances, and this is where I said might before, but there are some instances where you might want to have some kind of insurance policy for estate planning purposes, or there's some kind of special circumstance out there that requires you to keep those life insurance, to keep that life insurance benefit for someone else in your life that might need it. So you hear me equivocating, kind of going back and forth. If it's a comfort level thing in your family, and someone in your family, someone that you care about, really just wants it and you can afford it, then I think that's fine. Keep the life insurance policy. But maybe if it's just you and your wife or husband, and you guys have what you need in terms of retirement income from Social Security, pensions, distributions from investments, rental real estate, etc., and you're going to be fine with every asset that you have, then you may not need that life insurance policy. So again, I obviously can't make a recommendation for you on that in a podcast format, but you can reach out to your life insurance agent, some kind of neutral, independent third party like a certified financial planner, or some kind of expert to kind of help you make that decision. But for a lot of the retirees that I work with who are still working, but they're going to be retired soon, or they're in the early stages of retirement, there's really just not a need, emphasis on need, for life insurance in retirement. And so that is that is another way that we can save money on expenses in retirement. So that's our third expense that might go down in retirement. Our fourth one, and this is a really interesting one, and I love this one, is restaurant bills and eating out bills. And this is something that I found out through some research of two professors. Hope I get their names right. Eric Hurst and Mark Aguiar, and they did some research on what retirees and retired households are spending on eating out in retirement, and food in general. And they found that spending on food falls by 25% in retirement, which is, man, I was surprised by how big that number was. But then I was not surprised by spending on dining out at restaurants falls by 35% in retirement. That's not a surprise because the professor's hypotheses here is that since you have more time in retirement, you're not having that 9 to 5, you're not having the commute that we just got rid of a couple points ago, you're more likely to cook for yourself as opposed to going out to a restaurant. That makes sense. That's what I was expecting. When you're working 40 to 50 hours a week at a stressful job, it just makes much more sense that someone would grab a coffee on the way to go to work. You'd pick up lunch near you, you'd pick up something on the way home for dinner. But beyond that, with the surplus of time, retirees not only skip takeout more often, but they're also prone to look for better deals at grocery stores. And that's how they kind of explained how food would fall by 25% in retirement. They felt like, with this extra time, retirees would clip those coupons, they'd go to the clearance section, they'd go to the stores where they knew there were better deals, they'd get better deals on certain days of the week when they know they would have them. They would just be more cost conscious in terms of eating out, as well as when they go grocery shopping, just get the better deals. And so that's why we saw such a big decline on eating out and restaurant bills in retirement. My last point as we wrap up the 5 expenses that might go down in retirement is taxes, and this really depends on your state. It also depends on your tax planning, and I've done a podcast series on tax planning before, so go back and listen to that if you have not heard that before. But in terms of your specific state where you live, obviously some states are going to be more tax friendly than others, and if you're retired or thinking about retirement, you just want to do a little research on what your state situation is for taxes in retirement, or retiree type taxes that you might have to pay. Obviously, there's income tax, there's property tax, there's sales tax. I want you to do a little research and see where your state shapes up, or if you're thinking of relocating, see where that new state might compare to your current state. Now, the best resource I've come across to identify what your taxation is going to be, especially in those categories I mentioned before, income tax, property tax, sales tax, is by the Tax Foundation tax data by state, and that's the technical term for that website that they have. So if you just go to your search engine, whatever you're on, and you search for Tax Foundation state taxes, the top 1 or 2 results going to take you to taxfoundation.org, and from there you're going to be able to select your state, and then it's going to show you exactly what the tax situation is in that specific state. And then you can kind of compare and contrast to the national average as well as state to state, where the state that you're looking at kind of looks overall compared to other states that you analyze it with. Now, some things for you to think about as you look at your state taxes is there a state income tax? There's, I think it's 7 or 8 states that don't have a state income tax. So you have earned income, you have to pay earned income to the federal government, but you may not have to pay it to your state if you're in the last few years of your working years. And then the next thing that we can consider here is, how are the capital gains taxed? Are capital gains taxed as ordinary income, or is there a lower tax bracket for capital gains? And there's a less amount of states that have a lower bracket for capital gains. I think at the last count, it's around 10 states have a lower bracket for capital gains income, as opposed to, the other 40 states who tax capital gains at the same rates as ordinary income. So that's another thing to look at. A third thing for you to look at is, how are Social Security and pension income taxed? Are they 100% included with your state tax income, or some states actually let you deduct pension or Social Security income from whatever your state income tax is, and then you calculate your taxes from there. So those are 3 big things that I want you to look at. Obviously, it's hard for me to speak to your specific state, since I want to cover as many states and help as many people as possible. So I do, again, think the best place for you to go is the Tax Foundation's tax data by state. Just search that term, and I am almost positive it's going to take you to taxfoundations.org, where you can analyze where your state's currently ranked in terms of all of those taxes. The last thing I want to mention in terms of taxes in retirement is that some people, I got to admit, are going to pay higher taxes in retirement than they are right now, and they may be surprised by that, and probably no fault of their own, but they haven't done proper tax planning, and no one really teaches us this. So I hesitate to say it's anyone's fault, but essentially you want to be as flexible as possible with where your tax buckets are in retirement: taxable, tax deferred, tax free, and make sure you have adequate amounts in each of those. If you don't, and everything's in a tax deferred bucket, which is where most people have their retirement money, then you're just subject to higher tax increases in the future, which, not to get political, but President Biden is talking about, and there's some other reasons why you might think that Congress and presidents in the future might increase taxes in the future. So if you don't give yourself that flexibility, then there is a chance that you could pay higher taxes in the future. And if you want to learn more about that, I really think you need to pick up my book. It's called The Retirement Tax Bomb, and it really talks about how you can lower the tax liability that you're going to have over the course of your lifetime. And that's available at freeretirementbooks.com. Again, go pick up my book, The Retirement Tax Bomb. It's going to talk all about how to lower our taxes over the course of your entire lifetime, not just in the current year, but over your lifetime. And that's available at freeretirementbooks.com. So pick it up, give me some short contact information there, and then I'll send you a free PDF copy of my book. That's all I've got for today. We are going to be transitioning on to retirement income. So how do we calculate our retirement income? What are some ways that we can get income in retirement from our investments or from some other sources? And we're just going to be covering everything that you need to know in terms of retirement income. That's in the next 4 or so episodes of Retirement Clarity Radio. So make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you next week. Bye. Thanks again for listening. As a reminder, you should consult with a financial advisor familiar with the specific circumstances of your unique financial situation before making any financial decisions. Nothing in this podcast is a solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Any mentions of rate of return are hypothetical in nature and not a guarantee of future returns. Scott Newhouse, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Forthright Finances, a California and Nevada registered investment advisor.